The morning sky hung heavy over the outskirts of a small town in Wisconsin, blanketing the old junkyard in a cold, colorless mist. Rusted car frames leaned against one another like forgotten bones, and the air was thick with the scent of damp metal and old gasoline. Walking slowly between the rows of wreckage was a girl no older than 10, wrapped in a handmade patchwork coat stitched together from fading scraps of fabric. Her name was Emily Jane Prescott, but to most people in her Amish community, she was just Em. Her braids were tight, her boots scuffed, and her silence loud. Emily wasn't supposed to be there. She had wandered away from the family wagon during their monthly supply trip to town. No one had noticed. Drawn by a strange blue butterfly fluttering through the frosty air, she had stepped into the junkyard, curious and cautious. Every instinct in her told her to go back. But curiosity, for Em, was louder than fear. And that's when she saw it. Between two rust-covered Chevys, the trunk of a silver sedan stood half open. Inside, a man's eyes met hers, wide, desperate, pleading. His mouth was sealed with tape, his hands bound tightly with rope. Next to him, like something out of a strange dream, sat a wounded German shepherd. His front paw was wrapped in blood-stained gauze. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply stared at her, calmly, like he understood she was his only hope. Emily froze, her breath caught in her throat, but something in the dog's eyes gave her courage. With trembling fingers, she pulled out the small farm knife she carried in her coat pocket, usually used for cutting twine, and stepped forward. The man's gaze followed her every move, but there was no fear in his eyes, only a silent, urgent plea. She sliced through the rope quickly, then peeled the tape from his mouth. He gasped for air, blinking rapidly. "You're real," he whispered. "I'm Officer Hal Morgan. That's K9 Max. We were taken days ago." He couldn't finish. Something clanged in the distance, a metal pipe hitting the ground. "They're coming back," he said hoarsely. "We have to go." Emily looked at Max. His leg was shaking. He wouldn't make it far. But Em didn't hesitate. "I know a place," she whispered. Her voice was soft, but steady. She helped Officer Morgan up, and Max followed, limping behind. As they slipped between the wrecked cars, disappearing into the fog, Emily felt something shift inside her. Nothing would ever be the same again. Emily led Officer Hal and Max through a narrow trail behind the junkyard, her boots crunching over dry leaves and gravel. She didn't speak much, only looking back occasionally to make sure they were still following. Hal limped badly, his face pale with pain, and Max was struggling with every step. The woods were quiet, broken only by their movement, and the occasional gust of wind that whispered through the trees like a warning. Em knew exactly where she was going. A collapsed hunting cabin that her brother once showed her, hidden behind a thicket near the creek. By the time they arrived, Hal was barely standing. He collapsed onto the dirt floor of the ruined structure, leaning against a broken beam, breathing hard. Max curled up next to him, whimpering softly. Emily knelt beside the dog and gently touched his injured paw. "We need to clean this," she muttered, pulling a small cloth from her coat pocket. It smelled faintly of mint from the homemade soap her mother used. She tore it into strips and wrapped the paw tighter more firmly. Hal watched her work, stunned. "You're not just some lost kid, are you?" he asked, his voice gravelly. Emily looked up at him, her eyes calm but unreadable. "I'm not lost," she said quietly. "You were." That response hit him harder than he expected. He tried to smile, but the weight of everything, his injury, the cold, and the fact that his own department still hadn't found him, pressed down on him like a stone. "Do you know who did this to you?" Emily asked suddenly, not looking up. Her question was direct, emotionless. Hal hesitated. No names, just faces. They wore masks, but one of them had a tattoo on his wrist. A red scorpion. Emily's brows furrowed. She didn't recognize the symbol, but she filed it away. Every detail mattered now. She could feel it in her gut. As the sky began to darken, Emily stood. "I'll come back tomorrow. I'll bring food and bandages, but no one can know you're here." Hal reached for her arm weakly. "Why are you helping me?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she knelt again and whispered, "Because someone helped me once, and I never got to say thank you." With that, she slipped out through the trees, her figure swallowed by the evening mist. Hal looked down at Max, who watched the cabin entrance as if expecting her return already. Somewhere deep inside, Hal understood something that words couldn't explain. This wasn't just rescue. It was the start of something much bigger. Emily didn't sleep that night. She lay on her straw mattress in the small upstairs room of her family's farmhouse, staring at the wooden beams above her. Outside, the wind howled softly across the cornfields, and the distant barn creaked like an old man groaning in his sleep. Her mind replayed every detail of the day: the man's bound hands, the dog's wounded paw, the fear in Officer Hal's voice. But it wasn't just fear she had seen in him. It was shame, and that, more than anything, stayed with her. Downstairs, her mother, Rachel, moved through the kitchen in the early hours, preparing dough for the day's bread. The house smelled of yeast and burning wood. Emily crept down the stairs, careful not to wake her brother Samuel, who was a light sleeper. Her mother turned when she entered the room. "You're up early," she said, kneading slowly. Emily just nodded and sat at the table, quiet. Rachel glanced at her daughter's face for a long moment. "You've got that look again," she added. "Like your mind's not here." Emily hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you think all policemen are good?" Rachel stopped kneading. The question cut through the quiet like a blade. "Why do you ask something like that?" she replied, not accusing, but cautious. "Just wondering," Emily mumbled, keeping her eyes down. Rachel sighed, wiping her hands on a cloth. "No one's all good. No one's all bad. But some men wear badges and forget what it means. Others wear them and never forget. That's what matters." Later that morning, Emily returned to the cabin, carrying a small basket wrapped in cloth, bread, boiled eggs, and a jar of salve made from calendula and beeswax. Inside the ruin, Officer Hal looked weaker, but more alert. Max wagged his tail faintly at the sight of her. "I didn't think you'd come back," Hal said. "I did," Emily replied, kneeling by the dog. "And I brought this." She opened the jar and gently applied the salve to Max's paw, working with slow, practiced hands. As she worked, Hal reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled photograph. He handed it to her. "This was taped inside the trunk. I think they wanted me to see it." Emily unfolded the photo. It showed Hal shaking hands with another officer in front of a courthouse. The man beside him had a tattoo on his wrist, the red scorpion. Her eyes narrowed. "Do you know him?" Hal asked. Emily didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood up and looked toward the woods. "I know where I've seen that man before," she said. Her voice was low and steady. "He used to come to our farm." Emily's words hung in the cold air like a ghost. "He used to come to our farm." Hal sat up straighter despite the pain in his ribs. "You're sure?" he asked, trying to keep his voice even. Emily nodded slowly, eyes still fixed on the woods as if expecting the man to step out from between the trees. "He came once a month. Talked to my brother, sometimes my mother. I thought he was just a salesman." Hal's mind raced. Was his name ever mentioned? Emily shook her head. "No, but Samuel always got quiet after he left. And Mama would pray longer that night." She finally turned to face him. "I didn't think much of it before, but now, I don't know." Hal folded the photo and slid it back into his coat. There was more to this farm girl than he'd thought. More intuition, more memory, more weight in her silence. Back at the Prescott farm, Samuel was sharpening an old axe near the barn. He paused when he saw Emily return from the woods, the empty basket swinging at her side. "Where were you?" he asked, voice firm. "Walking," she replied, brushing past him. "You shouldn't be out that far alone," he added, watching her closely. Emily didn't answer. She felt it now. Every time Samuel looked at her, it was as if he was measuring how much she knew. That night, Emily couldn't sleep again. She waited until the farmhouse was still and quiet, then crept downstairs. She moved to the old pantry floor, pulling up 2 loose boards she had discovered as a child. Beneath them, wrapped in cloth, were a few old letters, all addressed to Rachel Prescott, her mother. Emily unfolded one. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The letter spoke of arrangements, loyalties, and payment in trust. No names, just enough to chill her. In the morning, she returned to the cabin. Hal noticed her expression before she even spoke. "You found something," he said. Emily nodded and handed him the letter. As he read, his jaw clenched. "This handwriting, I've seen it in police reports. This isn't just corruption. This is a cover-up." Max whined softly and pressed closer to Emily. She scratched behind his ears, comforting him more than herself. Hal looked at her. "Emily, I think your family's caught in the middle of something dangerous." She didn't blink. "I think they always were." Then she added quietly, "You said the man in the photo had a partner. If we find him, maybe we find out why you were taken." The photograph stayed with Emily long after she left the cabin that morning. She walked back to the farm with her hands in her coat pockets, the autumn wind biting at her cheeks. Her mind raced with questions she didn't know how to ask, and answers she wasn't sure she wanted to find. If the man with the scorpion tattoo had come to their farm, who else knew? And why had her mother never said a word? That evening, Rachel Prescott sat alone by the kitchen window, darning socks under the fading light. Emily entered quietly and placed the folded photograph on the table. Her mother didn't look up. "Where did you get this?" Rachel asked after a long silence. Her voice was calm, but her hands had stopped moving. "Near the junkyard," Emily replied simply. "He said the man in the photo helped take him." Rachel finally looked up, her eyes glassy. "There are things I never told you to protect you, Emily, but maybe I was wrong." Rachel stood, walked slowly to the pantry, and opened a drawer Emily had never seen her touch. From it, she pulled a worn leather envelope, sealed with twine. Inside were 3 photographs. In all of them, the man with the tattoo appeared, but always in the background. In one, he stood beside a younger officer, smiling broadly. Rachel placed her finger on the younger man's face. "That's the second one," she whispered. "He was the one in charge. The other just followed." Emily studied the second man's face. Clean-cut, confident, and disturbingly familiar. "I've seen him before," she said softly. "He came to the school once. He said he was doing a talk about safety." Rachel nodded. "That's how they get close. They play roles, smile, shake hands, and no one ever questions them." Her voice trembled. "Your father, he tried to expose them. Years ago, before the accident." Emily's heart thudded in her chest. "That wasn't an accident?" Rachel shook her head. "No, it was a warning." Back at the cabin, Hal sat against the wall, going over the letter again and again. Max slept beside him, breathing steady. Every piece of the puzzle was starting to fit, but the picture it formed was darker than he'd expected. A network of corruption, officers who had vanished, whistleblowers silenced. And now, somehow, a little girl from an Amish farm was the only person brave enough to bring the truth into the light. As the sun disappeared behind the trees, Emily walked back into the woods. This time not to hide, but to reveal. She knew now that the enemy wasn't just in uniforms. The enemy smiled, shook hands, came to her home, and she was ready to face it. That night, Emily waited until the farmhouse was dark and still before slipping out again. Her breath puffed in soft clouds as she moved through the yard, careful not to wake the dogs. The moon hung low, casting silver over the fields. But as she passed the barn, a voice came from the shadows. "You've been sneaking off a lot lately." She froze. It was Samuel, standing just beyond the doorway, arms crossed. His eyes weren't angry, they were searching. "Where are you going?" he asked. Emily turned toward him slowly. "To the woods." She didn't lie. "Not really." Samuel stepped closer, his boots crunching the gravel. "And what's in the woods that's worth risking all this?" His voice was quiet, but edged with something new, fear. "I found a man," she said. "A police officer. Someone hurt him. Someone with a red scorpion tattoo." The moment she said it, something in Samuel's face shifted, like a window slamming shut. He looked away, jaw tightening. "You need to forget about that," he said. "You don't understand what you're getting into." Emily took a step closer. "Then explain it to me." Her voice was steady. "Mama said people used to come here. She said Dad tried to stop something bad." Samuel swallowed hard, then sat on the edge of the feed bin. For the first time in years, he looked like a scared boy instead of a hardened young man. They paid him to keep quiet. Some guys in law enforcement, some with businesses in town. They said they were cleaning up the city, but really, they were just making it theirs. He paused. "When Dad wouldn't take the money anymore, the accident happened. And after that, Mom told me never to speak of it. I thought it was over. But then they came back. The man with the tattoo and the one in the photo. They came asking questions. Wanted to know if Dad left anything behind." Emily sat beside him, her small frame still and alert. "So you knew? You knew he was dangerous?" Samuel nodded slowly. "I thought I could protect you by keeping quiet. But maybe I just made it worse." She stood up. "I need you to help me now." Samuel looked at her, surprised. "Help you do what?" She met his eyes without flinching. "Finish what Dad started." The next morning, the cold air rolled in early, carrying with Ella a sense of urgency. Emily stood by the edge of the woods with Samuel, her hands buried deep in her coat pockets. He had agreed to help, but only after insisting on seeing Officer Hal for himself. "I need to know this isn't just a story in your head," he said. Emily didn't argue. She understood. What they were stepping into was dangerous, and once they crossed the line, there'd be no way back. They walked in silence through the trees, the frost crunching beneath their boots. When they reached the broken-down cabin, Hal sat up quickly, Max growling low beside him. But once he saw Emily, and then Samuel, his expression softened. "This your brother?" he asked. Emily nodded. Samuel didn't say anything right away. He just looked at Hal, as if trying to read the truth in his injuries. After a long pause, he spoke. "You're the one who was taken?" Hal nodded. "By men who wear the same badge I used to trust." He handed Samuel the folded photograph, pointing to the second man, the one in the background. "This is the real problem. He's the one calling the shots." Samuel studied the photo, his brow furrowed. "I've seen him. He met with someone at the feed store last week. I didn't know who he was." Emily's heart skipped. "He's still here. Some of them never left," Hal said. "They're too deep in now, and they think no one will ever speak up." Samuel ran a hand through his hair, pacing a few steps away. "If I bring up what I know, what Dad left behind, they'll come for us." Emily stepped forward. "They already are. Hal's here because he got too close. Max nearly died. What more do you need?" Her voice shook, not with fear, but with conviction. Hal watched the exchange silently, realizing that what he needed wasn't just evidence. It was allies. Real ones. Samuel finally turned back. "There's something buried in the barn, under the old horse stall. Dad hid it after the fire." Emily blinked. "What is it?" He hesitated. "A notebook. Names. Transactions. Even badge numbers." He said if anything happened to him, that book would speak louder than he ever could. Hal looked at Samuel with something close to hope. "If we get that book, we can bring them down." Samuel nodded. "Then we better move fast. If that man's still in town, he's not just watching. He's waiting." That night, the barn was colder than usual. The air was still heavy with memory. Emily stood at the edge of the wooden stall, a lantern flickering in her hand. The beam above her head still bore the scorch marks from the fire that had nearly destroyed their farm years ago. Samuel knelt beside her, prying up the warped boards with a crowbar. Every creak of the wood echoed louder than it should have, like the barn itself was holding its breath. Beneath the boards, buried under layers of dirt and ash, was a rusted metal box. Samuel lifted it slowly, brushing off soot with his sleeve. Emily leaned in, watching as he opened it. Inside was a thick black notebook, wrapped in wax paper, along with a small cassette tape, labeled only with the word, "Insurance." Samuel's hand trembled as he held it. "He never told me what was on the tape," he muttered. "Just said if it came to this, we'd know what to do." They brought the box to the cabin, where Hal waited with Max. As soon as Hal saw the notebook, his entire posture changed. He sat forward, flipping through the pages, eyes wide. This is it," he breathed. "Dates, payments, badge numbers, names of officers who disappeared. It's all here." He held up a page with 2 signatures. This guy was found dead last year. They called it suicide. But he knew too much. He looked at Samuel. "Your father risked everything to get this down." Emily picked up the cassette. "We need to hear this," she said. Hal nodded. "I know someone who can transfer it to digital. Someone I trust." Samuel looked uneasy. "That means going to town." Hal met his gaze. "It's time. If we wait any longer, they'll find us first." Just then, Max stood up sharply, ears alert. A second later, the crunch of gravel echoed from beyond the trees. A car door slammed. Flashlight beams cut through the woods, slicing across the darkness like searchlights. Samuel killed the lantern instantly. "They're here," he whispered. Hal grabbed the notebook and the cassette, stuffing them into his coat. "We have to split up," he said. "If they catch all of us, it's over." Emily's heart pounded. "Where do I go?" Hal turned to her. "Home. Hide the box again. Don't let them find it." Samuel looked at her, then at Hal. "I'll lead them away." Outside, the footsteps were getting closer, and the past wasn't hiding anymore. Emily sprinted through the trees, the cold night air burning her lungs. She clutched the metal box against her chest as if her life depended on it, because now it did. Behind her, flashlight beams cut through the woods, too close. She could hear voices, men shouting, boots crushing leaves, the metallic click of weapons being readied. Whoever they were, they weren't looking to talk. She made it to the edge of the field and ducked into the old irrigation ditch behind the barn. It was shallow, but just enough to hide in. She lay flat, holding her breath, listening. Footsteps approached. A voice, low, gruff, called out, "She's close. The girls got it. Find the Prescott kid. Bring them both." Another voice muttered something, and the sound of spreading footsteps filled the night. Emily pressed her face into the cold dirt, praying they wouldn't look down. Back in the woods, Samuel ran hard, his boots pounding against the frozen soil. He didn't look back. He didn't have to. He knew they were behind him. He could hear at least 2 sets of footsteps chasing him. But that was the plan. Draw them away from Emily. Led them somewhere they wouldn't expect. Somewhere he had an advantage. He veered left, toward the old creek bed, where the ground dropped steep and sharp. He jumped down just as a flashlight beam passed above. Meanwhile, Hal had taken the long route into town with Max trotting close behind. He carried the cassette in his coat pocket and the weight of the notebook under his arm. His contact, a retired tech specialist named Clara Whitmore, lived alone on the edge of town. When he knocked on her door just after midnight, she opened it with a shotgun in one hand and a mug of tea in the other. "You're late," she said, "and you look like hell." Hal handed her the tape. "I need this digitized. Now." In the barn, Emily finally crawled out from the ditch as the voices faded into the trees. She ran to the house, slipped inside, and went straight to the pantry. She pulled up the floorboards again, dropped the box back into place, and covered it quickly. Then she went upstairs and crawled into bed, her heart still racing. If they searched the house, she'd act scared, confused, like a little girl who didn't know a thing. But she did know, and tomorrow the truth would be out there. Somewhere in the darkness, the men who thought they were safe were about to realize they weren't. By dawn, the air was filled with sirens. It started when Clara Whitmore uploaded the audio file from the cassette to a private news forum, and then to the inbox of half a dozen national journalists. Within the hour, the story exploded. The voice on the tape was unmistakable. It was the second man from the photo, calm, confident, detailing payouts, threats, and names of officers, judges, and even businessmen involved in the network of corruption. The final words were chilling. "If anyone talks, we make them disappear, just like Prescott." Officer Hal Morgan stood outside the cabin as the sun rose, watching unmarked cars pour into town. For the first time in days, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Max sat by his side, alert but calm. They had done it, not alone but together. Emily, Samuel, Clara, and a man who died trying to do the right thing years ago. Now, the weight of all that silence was being broken loudly. At the Prescott farmhouse, Emily sat on the porch with her mother, the warmth of a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Rachel held her daughter's hand tightly. "Your father would be proud of you," she whispered. Emily didn't say anything right away. She just looked out at the field, golden in the morning light. "I didn't do it alone," she finally said. "We just finished what he started." Samuel emerged from the barn, face tired, but clear. He had spoken to the investigators, told them everything he knew. And for once, the truth hadn't destroyed something. It had rebuilt it. Officer Hal arrived soon after, handing over the notebook personally to the federal agents. "It's all there," he said. "He kept everything." The lead agent nodded solemnly. "This will change more than just this town." Later that day, reporters gathered near the edge of the Prescott property, cameras rolling. But Emily didn't go near them. Instead, she sat in the barn, beside the same place where the notebook had been hidden. Max lay at her feet, his paw fully healed now. She scratched behind his ears and whispered, "We kept your promise, Dad." There was no answer, but the silence felt different now, lighter. The town would never be the same, and neither would she. But in a world full of people who looked away, one small girl had chosen to look closer, and in doing so, reminded everyone what courage really looked like.